The most dangerous assumption humanity has ever made is that the human mind exists to discover truth. We take intelligence as proof of accuracy, perception as evidence of reality, and reason as a reliable compass pointing toward what is real. But evolution tells a very different story. The human mind was not shaped to see the universe as it is. It was shaped to keep a fragile body alive long enough to reproduce. Truth was never the objective. Survival was. Every sense you trust is a biological compromise. Vision does not show you reality. It edits it. The electromagnetic spectrum is vast beyond comprehension, yet your eyes sample a narrow band and present it as the totality of light. You see solidity where there is mostly empty space, color where there are only wavelengths, stability where there is constant motion. Hearing ignores most vibrations. Smell filters chemicals into emotional signals of danger or safety. Touch convinces you that boundaries exist where, at the atomic level, there are only forces repelling one another. These senses do not reveal the world. They simplify it into something manageable. This simplification is not a flaw. It is a feature. A creature that perceived reality in its raw complexity would be paralyzed by information. Survival requires speed, not accuracy. When early humans heard a rustle in the bushes, it did not matter whether the sound was truly a predator. What mattered was reacting as if it were. Those who paused to analyze reality precisely did not live long enough to pass on their genes. Over time, natural selection rewarded minds that distorted reality in useful ways. The result is a consciousness that confuses usefulness with truth. Your brain constantly predicts the world rather than perceiving it directly. What you experience as now is a constructed simulation assembled milliseconds after events have already occurred. Memory fills gaps. Expectations overwrite contradictions. The mind does not wait for certainty. It assumes. This is why optical illusions work, why eyewitness testimony fails, and why people cling to beliefs even when evidence contradicts them. Accuracy is expendable. Coherence is not. This is the uncomfortable foundation of human understanding. Reality is filtered through a system that evolved to deceive us efficiently. Language deepens the illusion. Words do not describe reality. They carve it into manageable pieces. By naming things, we pretend they are separate, stable, and distinct. Object, self, time, cause. These are not properties of the universe. They are cognitive conveniences. The universe does not recognize nouns. It does not divide itself into categories. It flows, but the human mind cannot function in a world without edges, so it invents them. This is why thinking feels like control. By labeling, measuring, and classifying, we gain the comforting sense that reality is graspable. But control is not comprehension. A map can help you navigate terrain without ever revealing what the terrain truly is. Human knowledge may be nothing more than a sophisticated survival map, useful, predictive, and fundamentally false. Even logic, often treated as the highest path to truth, is constrained by survival. Logic depends on assumptions so deeply embedded that we forget they are assumptions at all. Identity, non-contradiction, linear causality, these feel universal because they are necessary for functioning minds. But necessity does not equal truth. The universe may not obey the same rules that help apes build tools and societies. It only appears to do so because we cannot imagine otherwise. When science advances, it does not move closer to intuitive understanding. It moves further away. The universe revealed by physics is not something the mind naturally grasps. Time bends. Particles exist as probabilities. Observation alters outcomes. Space and time dissolve into mathematical abstractions. These discoveries feel disturbing, not because they are complex, but because they expose the limits of our evolved intuitions. They reveal a reality that resists being turned into a survival-friendly story. And yet, even science cannot escape the human filter. Instruments extend our senses, but interpretation remains cognitive. Data becomes theory. Theory becomes narrative. At every level, understanding is constrained by the architecture of the mind interpreting it. We never encounter reality directly, only models of it. This raises a deeply unsettling possibility. The universe may be fundamentally incompatible with human comprehension, not temporarily, not due to a lack of data or intelligence, but permanently. There may be aspects of existence that cannot be translated into human thought without distortion, just as higher dimensions cannot be visualized without collapsing them into shadows. If this is true, then many of humanity's deepest questions are not unanswered. They are unanswerable. Why does the universe exist? What is consciousness? Is there an ultimate purpose? These questions may assume a structure that reality does not possess. The mind asks them because it evolved to seek patterns, intentions, and causes. But the universe does not owe us explanations that fit our cognitive limits. This is where fear enters. If the mind was built for survival rather than truth, then certainty is an illusion. Belief systems, religious, philosophical, even scientific, may function less as windows into reality and more as psychological stabilizers. They give the mind something solid to stand on in a world that offers none. They reduce existential anxiety by replacing ignorance with meaning. But meaning, like perception, may be another survival adaptation. This does not mean everything is false. It means truth, if it exists, may not be accessible in the way we expect. Our understanding may always be partial, symbolic, and distorted, like interpreting a three-dimensional world through two-dimensional shadows. The scariest implication is not that we are ignorant. It is that we may be incapable of overcoming that ignorance. Human history celebrates knowledge as progress. Each generation believes it sees further than the last. But what if this progress is lateral, not vertical? What if we are merely refining the efficiency of our illusions rather than approaching reality itself? The mind evolved to reduce uncertainty, not to tolerate it. That is why we feel discomfort in ambiguity, why we rush to conclusions, why unanswered questions feel unbearable. A creature that accepts uncertainty calmly does not survive long in a dangerous environment. Anxiety, fear, and conviction were adaptive. Doubt was not. So when the universe presents itself as indifferent, silent, and incomprehensible, the mind reacts not with curiosity, but with distress. We sense that something is wrong, not with the universe, but with our place in it. We are asking a survival machine to confront truths it was never designed to face. And perhaps that is the ultimate paradox of consciousness. We have evolved just enough awareness to realize that we may never truly understand what we are aware of. The human mind stands at the edge of a reality it can model but not penetrate, describe but not experience, question but not resolve. We mistake our mental representations for the thing itself, not because we are foolish, but because our survival depends on it. If the universe were fully revealed to us, unfiltered, uninterpreted, uncompressed, it might not feel enlightening. It might feel annihilating. And so, the mind protects itself. It shows us a simplified world, a manageable narrative, a version of reality that allows us to wake up, act, and endure. Not a true world, but a survivable one. That is the terrifying truth beneath all understanding. We may live our entire lives inside a carefully evolved illusion, mistaking functionality for reality, coherence for truth, and survival for wisdom. And the universe, vast and indifferent, remains untouched by our need to understand it. Human knowledge has always advanced with a quiet promise that if we observe carefully enough, measure precisely enough, and think deeply enough, reality will eventually surrender its secrets. This belief sits at the heart of science, philosophy, and progress itself. Yet as observation has grown more powerful, something unsettling has emerged. The closer we move toward the foundations of existence, the less stable knowledge becomes. At the outer limits of observation, understanding does not sharpen, it collapses. The early successes of science reinforced the illusion that the universe is fully readable. Patterns were discovered, laws were written, predictions became possible. Nature seemed orderly, mechanical, almost obedient. But this clarity only existed within a narrow range, one conveniently aligned with human scale. The world of falling objects, burning fuel, and visible motion behaved predictably because it matched the conditions under which human cognition evolved. Beyond that range, certainty dissolves. At the smallest scales, matter refuses to behave like matter. Particles do not possess definite positions or velocities until measured. They exist as probability clouds, mathematical descriptions of potential, rather than solid objects. Observation is no longer passive. To observe is to interfere. To measure is to alter. The act of looking becomes an act of participation. This alone should have shattered our confidence. Knowledge was supposed to be independent of the observer. Truth was assumed to exist whether or not anyone looked. Yet at the quantum level, reality appears to hesitate, waiting for interaction before deciding what it will be. The universe does not reveal itself to us. It responds to us. At the opposite extreme, the cosmos fractures just as severely. Space and time, once considered absolute backdrops, warp and stretch. Massive objects bend reality itself. Time slows, distances lose their meaning, and the universe expands into something that cannot be visualized without abandoning common sense. The closer we look toward the beginning of everything, the less our equations agree with one another. Physics splits into incompatible frameworks, each successful in isolation, each collapsing when pushed too far. This is not ignorance waiting to be solved. This is structural failure. Dark matter and dark energy dominate the universe, yet remain invisible. They do not emit light, interact weakly, and cannot be directly detected. We infer their existence only because the universe does not behave as it should without them. Galaxies spin too fast. Expansion accelerates. Something unseen exerts control over everything we can see. Most of reality is missing from observation. This should be deeply disturbing. It means that what we call the universe is largely composed of things that refuse to appear. Our models work only by admitting that we do not know what most of existence is made of. Knowledge advances by naming ignorance, not eliminating it. Every new instrument extends the reach of observation, but also reveals new limits. Telescopes peer deeper into space, only to find horizons beyond which information cannot reach us. Microscopes probe smaller scales, only to encounter uncertainty principles that forbid complete measurement. There are boundaries not of technology, but of reality itself. At these boundaries, knowledge becomes unstable. Definitions blur, concepts fail, language breaks down. Causality, once the backbone of understanding, loses its authority. Effects can precede causes. Events correlate without explanation. Time itself becomes ambiguous. The universe no longer unfolds like a story with a clear beginning and end. It behaves more like a mathematical object, self-consistent, abstract, and profoundly indifferent to human intuition. The observer is trapped within this system. We cannot step outside reality to examine it from a neutral position. Every observation is embedded, every measurement constrained by the laws it seeks to uncover. This creates a closed loop. We use reality to study reality through tools made of reality, interpreted by minds that are also products of reality. There is no external vantage point. This creates a paradox at the heart of knowledge. To know something completely, one would need to observe it without influencing it. But such observation may be impossible in principle. The universe may not permit itself to be fully known by entities within it. In this sense, observation is not a path to truth, but a boundary condition. The more we observe, the more reality adapts, resists, or dissolves into abstraction. Knowledge does not accumulate infinitely. It converges toward a horizon and then breaks. This may explain why ultimate theories feel less like revelations and more like warnings. Theories of everything do not feel satisfying. They feel alien. They replace understanding with equations that function but do not explain. We can predict outcomes without knowing what anything truly is. Functionality replaces meaning. The collapse of knowledge at the edge of observation is not a failure of intelligence. It may be a fundamental property of existence. Just as no system can fully describe itself without contradiction, the universe may resist total self-knowledge. Any attempt to compress reality into a complete description may erase the very thing it seeks to capture. This realization carries an unsettling implication. There may be no final answers, only deeper abstractions, only models stacked on models, each useful, none complete. And yet, the human mind continues to push forward, driven by a hunger it cannot satisfy. Curiosity does not stop at the edge of coherence. It presses into paradox, into contradiction, into silence. We build theories not because they bring peace, but because uncertainty is unbearable. At the edge of observation, knowledge becomes something else entirely. It becomes a mirror. What we see reflected is not the universe, but the limits of our own cognition. The breakdown of understanding reveals the shape of the mind attempting to understand. This is why encounters with the unknown often provoke existential dread. It is not just that we do not know, it is that we sense we cannot know. The universe confronts us with a refusal, a silent boundary that cannot be crossed by thought alone. Perhaps the universe is not hiding its secrets. Perhaps there are no secrets in the way we imagine them, only structures that cannot be translated into human concepts without collapsing. If this is the case, then knowledge is not a journey toward truth, but a negotiation with ignorance. We learn how far we can go before meaning dissolves. We map the borders of comprehension, not the territory beyond them. The collapse of knowledge at the edge of observation suggests something deeply unsettling. Reality may not be designed to be known, not fully, not intuitively, not by creatures like us. We are observers. Inside a system that does not prioritize observation, our questions may be irrelevant to its operation. Our need for explanation may be a local phenomenon, not a universal one. And so we stand at the edge, surrounded by equations we cannot interpret, phenomena we cannot visualize, and truths we cannot internalize. Knowledge, once a source of confidence, becomes a reminder of limitation. The universe does not grow clearer the closer we look. It grows stranger. And at the boundary where observation fails, understanding does not wait patiently for us to catch up. It simply ends. Humanity treats consciousness as a crown, an achievement of evolution, the highest expression of complexity in the universe. We assume awareness grants authority, that the ability to observe reality implies a privileged relationship with it. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if consciousness is not a natural observer of the universe, but an intrusion within it, an anomaly that does not belong? The universe functioned for billions of years without eyes to witness it. Stars formed, galaxies collided, particles interacted, and time unfolded with perfect indifference to observation. Reality did not wait for awareness to emerge. It did not require meaning, intention, or experience to operate. Consciousness appeared late, briefly, and in a narrow corner of existence. This alone should challenge the idea that awareness is central rather than incidental. Evolution does not create observers to understand reality. It creates systems that react efficiently to stimuli. Consciousness may not have evolved because it was useful, but because it was unavoidable, a side effect of increasing neural complexity, a byproduct, not a purpose. If so, awareness is not a window into the universe. It is a byproduct of biological machinery that overshot its original function. This reframes consciousness as something potentially disruptive. The universe does not require self-reflection to function, but consciousness demands meaning, explanation, and coherence. It asks why in a system that only answers how. This mismatch creates tension, an uneasy friction between an indifferent reality and a mind desperate for significance. Consciousness does not passively receive reality. It interferes with it. At the most fundamental levels of physics, observation alters outcomes. The observer effect is often misunderstood, but its implications are profound. The act of measurement changes what is measured. Reality does not simply reveal itself to consciousness. It reacts to it. This suggests that awareness is not merely witnessing the universe, but interacting with it in a way that introduces instability. If consciousness alters reality, then it cannot be neutral. It is not standing outside the system, calmly recording events. It is inside, pushing, disturbing, forcing outcomes to crystallize. In this sense, consciousness behaves less like a camera and more like a pressure applied to an already strained structure. The discomfort this idea provokes may explain why deep introspection often leads to unease rather than clarity. When consciousness turns inward and examines itself, it encounters a paradox. The observer becomes the observed. There is no stable ground. The self dissolves into processes, impulses, memories, and feedback loops. Identity fractures. What feels like a unified I is revealed as a temporary narrative stitched together for functional coherence. This self-examination feels dangerous because it destabilizes the illusion of centrality. Consciousness senses that it may not be an essential feature of reality, but a fragile construct suspended within it, a local disturbance pretending to be universal. Some philosophers and neuroscientists have suggested that consciousness exists to limit experience, not expand it. Rather than revealing reality, awareness filters it. It suppresses overwhelming information, enforces continuity, and constructs a sense of self that can act decisively. Without this filtering, the organism would be flooded with stimuli, unable to function. If this is true, then moments when consciousness feels expanded, during meditation, psychedelic states, extreme stress, or existential crisis, are not enhancements. They are failures of the filter. The boundaries soften, the self loses its edges. Time dissolves, meaning collapses. These experiences often feel profound, but they also feel threatening, as if something essential is being violated. Perhaps that is because consciousness is not meant to see too much. The idea that awareness is an intruder rather than an observer also explains the pervasive sense of alienation that accompanies human existence. We feel separate from the world because consciousness creates separation. It divides subject from object, self from environment, observer from observed. This division is not inherent in reality. It is a cognitive artifact. The universe does not experience itself as divided. Only conscious beings do. This separation allows for survival, planning, prediction, self-preservation, but it also generates existential anxiety. The conscious mind stands apart from the world it depends on, aware of its own fragility, aware of death, aware of time passing. These are not universal truths. They are conscious burdens. If consciousness is an intruder, then the universe may be actively hostile to it, not through malice, but through indifference. Reality does not accommodate the needs of awareness. It does not slow down for comprehension. It does not provide meaning to ease existential fear. Consciousness must carve out relevance where none is given. This may explain why the universe feels so resistant to explanation, not because it is complex, but because consciousness is asking the wrong kind of questions. We seek narratives in a system that operates mathematically. We seek intention in processes that require none. We seek reassurance in a structure that does not notice our concern. There is a disturbing implication here. The suffering associated with consciousness may not be accidental. Anxiety, dread, and the fear of non-existence are not bugs. They are consequences of awareness exceeding its functional role. Consciousness knows too much to be comfortable, but too little to find resolution. This places humanity in a precarious position. We are aware enough to sense our insignificance, but not enough to escape it. We stand between ignorance and understanding, trapped in a state that produces reflection without peace. If consciousness is an intruder, then the universe does not need us to understand it. And worse, it may not allow us to. Our attempts to impose meaning may be met not with answers, but with silence, paradox, and abstraction. This silence feels personal, but it is not. It is structural. The universe does not respond because it does not recognize the questioner, yet consciousness persists. It continues to observe, to question, to doubt. It cannot stop intruding. Awareness, once ignited, does not willingly extinguish itself. It clings to existence, even when existence offers no justification. Perhaps this is the true tragedy of consciousness. Not that it will end, but that it exists at all. That a universe indifferent to meaning produced a mind that cannot live without it. If consciousness is an intruder, then understanding the universe may never bring comfort. Greater awareness may only deepen the sense of displacement. The more clearly we see, the more alien reality becomes, and so consciousness stands in a strange position, aware of a universe that does not require awareness, searching for belonging in a system that does not acknowledge its presence, an intruder, fully awake in a reality that never asked to be observed. For as long as humans have looked at the night sky, they have assumed that meaning exists somewhere beyond them, embedded in the stars, encoded in physical laws, or waiting at the end of understanding. This assumption feels natural. It comforts the mind. It suggests that existence is a puzzle with a solution, that suffering is part of a larger design, and that awareness itself has a purpose written into the structure of reality. But this assumption may be the most enduring illusion humanity has ever created. Meaning may not be hidden in the universe at all. The universe operates with astonishing precision. But precision does not imply intention. Galaxies form according to gravity, stars ignite through pressure and fusion, and life emerges through chemistry and selection. None of this requires meaning. None of it points toward a goal. These processes function whether they are witnessed or not. The universe does not pause to explain itself. It simply unfolds. When humans search for meaning in nature, they are projecting a psychological need outward. Meaning is not discovered in the universe. It is imposed upon it. We tell stories because stories help us survive uncertainty. We assign purpose because purposelessness destabilizes the mind. But survival strategies are not metaphysical truths. Ancient civilizations saw gods in storms and intentions in disasters because randomness was intolerable. Modern humans often replace gods with destiny, progress, or cosmic significance. The symbols change, but the impulse remains the same. We assume there must be a reason because the alternative, that existence has none, feels unbearable. Yet the universe gives no evidence that it cares about reasons. Consider scale. The vast majority of the universe is hostile to life. Most of space is cold, empty, and lethal. Time stretches for billions of years before life appears, and will continue for billions after it vanishes. Entire species emerge and disappear without leaving a trace. If meaning were fundamental, it would not be so effortlessly erased. Even life itself does not point toward purpose. Evolution has no destination. It produces complexity only when complexity increases survival. Intelligence is not inevitable. Consciousness is not guaranteed. They are contingent outcomes of specific conditions, not cosmic milestones. The universe does not aim toward awareness. Awareness happens when conditions briefly allow it. This realization is disturbing because it strips existence of narrative structure. Without hidden meaning, there is no grand story unfolding, no moral arc bending toward justice, no assurance that suffering serves a higher function. Events simply occur. The human mind resists this fiercely. We interpret coincidence as fate. We see patterns where none exist. We assign significance to our lives because insignificance feels like annihilation. But these reactions reveal more about our psychology than about reality. Meaning feels real because it is real to us, but that does not mean it exists independently of us. When science searches for meaning, it finds none. It finds mechanisms, interactions, probabilities. Physics does not contain values. Chemistry does not encode purpose. Biology explains function, not significance. Even consciousness, when examined closely, dissolves into neural activity and feedback loops. There is no location where meaning can be found, no layer of reality where it resides. This absence is not an oversight. It is a clue. If meaning were built into the universe, it would be universal, present at all scales, accessible to all observers. Instead, meaning appears only in conscious systems that require it. It emerges locally, temporarily, and disappears when those systems collapse. Meaning behaves like a biological phenomenon, not a cosmic one. This leads to a frightening conclusion. The universe does not justify our existence. There is no external validation waiting to be discovered, no hidden message that explains why anything should matter. The universe does not care whether it is understood, loved, or feared, and yet humans continue to act as if meaning must be there. We treat discovery as revelation, as though one more equation or theory will uncover purpose itself. But every advance only deepens the silence. The universe becomes more efficient, more abstract, and less personal. Perhaps meaning feels absent because it was never part of the structure to begin with. This realization reframes suffering in a brutal way. Pain is not a test. Loss is not preparation. Death is not a transition. These interpretations comfort us, but they are narratives layered onto events that require no explanation. The universe does not assign lessons. It allows consequences. This does not make suffering trivial. It makes it real. Without cosmic meaning, pain does not serve a higher goal. It simply hurts. And that may be more terrifying than believing it has purpose. The refusal of the universe to provide meaning leaves humans in a precarious position. We must either accept that meaning does not exist independently or continue pretending that it does. Both choices carry weight. Acceptance risks nihilism, pretending risks self-deception. But perhaps this is a false dilemma. Meaning may not be hidden in the universe, but that does not mean it is worthless. It means meaning is not discovered, it is created. It exists only where conscious beings choose to sustain it. It is fragile, temporary, and subjective, but that does not make it irrelevant. In a universe without inherent purpose, meaning becomes an act of defiance, not against the universe, but against despair. We create significance not because reality demands it, but because we do. This creation does not change the universe, it changes us. Still, this freedom is unsettling. If meaning is not given, then responsibility shifts entirely onto human shoulders. There is no cosmic authority to justify values, no ultimate reference point to resolve conflict. We must decide what matters without guidance from the stars. This is why the idea that meaning is hidden in the universe is so attractive. It relieves us of responsibility. It promises that existence makes sense, even when we cannot see how. But comfort is not evidence. The universe remains silent. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is not that the universe lacks meaning, but that it functions perfectly without it. It does not collapse into chaos. It does not require justification. It exists, expands, and transforms with indifferent elegance. Meaning, then, is not a cosmic feature. It is a human response to an impersonal reality. And this may be the deepest horror of all. Not that life is meaningless, but that meaning is optional. The universe will continue whether we find significance or not. It will not reward understanding. It will not punish ignorance. It will not notice our conclusions. Meaning is not waiting to be uncovered. It is something we bring with us, or something we choose to live without. There is a quiet assumption beneath every human question that reality is, in principle, knowable. That with enough time, intelligence, and persistence, the universe will eventually reveal itself. This belief fuels science, philosophy, religion, and progress itself. Yet there is a possibility far more unsettling than ignorance or error, a possibility that shatters the foundation of inquiry itself. What if we were never supposed to know? Not prevented by gods, not blocked by hidden guardians, but constrained by the very structure of existence and the limits of the minds attempting to understand it. Evolution does not design organisms for truth. It designs them for functionality. As explored earlier, perception simplifies, cognition filters, and consciousness narrows experience into something survivable. Knowledge in this context is not a path toward ultimate reality, but a tool for navigating immediate threats. If knowing too much destabilizes survival, then ignorance becomes adaptive. This raises a disturbing idea. The boundaries of understanding may not be accidental, they may be protective. Just as pain prevents bodily damage, cognitive limits may prevent existential collapse. The universe may contain structures, truths, or scales of reality that cannot be internalized by conscious beings without psychological breakdown. In this sense, unknowing is not a flaw, it is a safety mechanism. History offers subtle evidence of this. Every time humans have pushed too far into abstraction, meaning has frayed. The deepest discoveries in physics do not produce clarity, they produce unease. Time stops behaving like time. Space loses shape. Identity dissolves into equations. The closer we approach the foundations of reality, the less human it becomes. This is not the trajectory of enlightenment. It is the path toward alienation. If the universe were meant to be known, understanding would feel stabilizing. Instead, it feels vertiginous. Knowledge at the edges induces anxiety, not peace. It undermines intuition, erodes certainty, and dissolves narratives that once grounded existence. Perhaps this is because human cognition is not equipped to hold ultimate truth. The idea that we were never supposed to know reframes curiosity as a dangerous impulse, not immoral, not forbidden, but destabilizing. Curiosity evolved to solve local problems: where to find food, how to predict weather, how to understand social hierarchies. It was never meant to interrogate the structure of reality itself. When curiosity turns inward, toward consciousness, time, and existence, it begins to erode the very frameworks that allow it to function. The mind attempts to consume concepts that do not fit within it. Some philosophers have compared this to an ant attempting to understand a city, not because the ant lacks intelligence, but because the structure exceeds its cognitive capacity. The city is not hiding its nature, it is simply incomprehensible at that scale. But the human situation may be worse. Unlike the ant, we are aware of our limitations. We can sense the edge of understanding. We feel the presence of something beyond us, pressing against the boundaries of thought. This awareness creates existential tension, a sense of being locked outside a truth we cannot access. This tension may be what fuels anxiety, dread, and the persistent feeling that something about reality is wrong. If we were never supposed to know, then the universe is not a puzzle to be solved, but an environment to be endured. Understanding becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Survival takes precedence over insight. This idea casts religious and philosophical systems in a new light. Perhaps they did not emerge to explain reality, but to shield the mind from it. Narratives of purpose, divine order, and moral structure may function as cognitive buffers, stories that stabilize consciousness in the face of an incomprehensible universe. Even modern ideologies may serve a similar function. Progress, human exceptionalism, and cosmic significance replace older myths, but the role remains the same: to reassure the mind that existence makes sense. If the universe were truly meant to be understood, such narratives would be unnecessary. Clarity would be built in. Instead, meaning must be constantly reinforced, defended, and reinterpreted. This suggests that knowledge itself may be double-edged, useful within limits, but dangerous beyond them. There may be thresholds past which understanding no longer improves life, but degrades it. This is a terrifying thought for a species that defines itself by knowing. The scariest implication of all is not that the universe hides its truth, but that it does not care whether we find it. The universe does not reward inquiry with revelation. It responds with abstraction, silence, and paradox. It allows us to approach the edge and then offers nothing beyond it. There is no final answer waiting, no moment of total comprehension, no revelation that resolves all uncertainty, only deeper layers of complexity that grow increasingly detached from human intuition. If we were never supposed to know, then the search for ultimate truth is not a heroic quest. It is a confrontation with limitation, and limitation, once fully recognized, offers no comfort. Yet humans continue to search. We build larger machines, more powerful theories, more precise models, not because we are destined to succeed, but because we cannot tolerate not trying. Curiosity is not a choice, it is a compulsion. This may be the cruelest irony of consciousness. We are driven to seek truths that may not be survivable to fully grasp. The universe may allow partial knowledge, enough to function, predict, and manipulate. But total understanding may be inaccessible by design, not because of intent, but because of incompatibility. Like attempting to pour the ocean into a cup, understanding may fail not due to resistance, but due to scale. If this is the case, then wisdom may not lie in knowing more, but in recognizing where knowledge ends, in accepting that some questions destabilize rather than enlighten, in understanding that the universe does not owe us coherence. The scariest possibility is not that we will never know everything, it is that knowing everything would break us. And so we exist in a narrow corridor between ignorance and annihilating clarity, aware enough to ask, limited enough to survive, and forever suspended between curiosity and fear. If we were never supposed to know, then the universe is not cruel. It is simply indifferent, and we are the ones who keep knocking on a door that was never meant to open.